So why do you think history at LCIS is different than anywhere else?
Well, first of all, actually, I should say this. Thank you for inviting me, Bianca, because I'm a big fan of your work and I've admired what you've been doing for quite some time. If you're an outsider, the first thing you notice when coming in to the school is the way in which we use the technology. A lot of schools invest heavily in ICT, may even provide laptops for students, as we do, but if schools are going to use them effectively, they must be embedded in the curriculum so that students don't even notice that they're actually using them. I mean, just look at what's happening here. I've got a bunch of 13-year-olds comfortably using professional filmmaking equipment as if it's the most normal thing in the world. Say hello.
So the school gives an iPad or a MacBook to every student. What difference does that make when teaching history?
The way in which laptops and iPads make a difference becomes pretty obvious when you think about what they replace. I mean, the first thing they replace are textbooks. We don't use textbooks, we use digital resources, we use websites that we publish ourselves. I think a website is much more supportive than any textbook can be. Pretty much everything I do in the classroom can be uploaded onto the site. If you need to see that film or that presentation or anything that happened in the lesson that you missed, or you just want to see it again because you feel you benefit from that, you can see it whenever you want. If you've been away, it will be there if you missed a lesson.
Yet, the ideas and methods that they used had barely changed since Roman times.
And this is also the advantage that comes from what I would call the multimedia nature of the content. Textbooks, as you know, are restricted to words and pictures. A website is obviously much more engaging. The website has quizzes, it has interactive games. I have a YouTube channel which I can upload short edited clips specifically for a lesson, just for a particular lesson. And the point that I'm trying to make is that the support that a curriculum can provide, which is online, can be one that is unique to us and to our students' needs. When I arrived at the school, you may have seen the advert, but when I arrived at the school, I saw an advert for the school, for La Côte, that said, "This is our history classroom." And it was a picture of the beautiful Chillon Castle down on the lake, magnificent picture. And I thought, that's a great idea. I love the idea of making a curriculum that is just for our students. But if you are going to do that, if you're going to make the most of the local environment, it's not just about going out, you need to build on that in the classroom as well. And unlike a national curriculum, the middle years programme, the MYP, doesn't specify the historical content that you've got to study. It is a genuinely tailored curriculum. It's not bland, it's not generic, it's specific to our kids. As well as replacing the textbook, the MacBook also, of course, replaces the exercise book, and in many ways this is even more interesting. If students are forced to express their learning in an exercise book, then they are limited by what can be written down or drawn on the lines on a page. With a MacBook, obviously, there are no such limitations. Basically, what you've got is a digital portfolio. Students can store and review their contributions to a class debate, which I film.
Selfish, one that thinks about the people, and one that does not have to think about everything that's happened before. Hey.
Or a presentation they make to the whole class. It's really painful to do, as I'm sure you know, but there is no better way to improve your presentation skills than watching yourself present. And you can do that with this sort of technology.
So I shall be talking about Castro's Cuba as a 20th century authoritarian state.
So the authoritarian state I was studying was Tanzania, and it was under Julius Nyerere.
One of the things I'm really keen on, I'm a film studies teacher as well, of course, is student-produced documentary films. I've been making documentary films in history since it was actually possible to make them. In fact, I was making them before it was possible to make them. But
you see that? That's me! Don't be shocked by this, but I lit up my time by creating the marvel of alternating current.
The Second World War was the most global war in all of history. Over 100 million men were directly involved from over 30 different countries.
Ever since the British needed access to the American production line to make their own weapons and tanks and such, They made a deal with the United States.
He was an inventor, educator, scientist, and innovator.
So my view is if we want students to be critical viewers of film, whether it's reportage, whether it's documentary, whether it's feature films, then students need to be filmmakers as well. And of course a MacBook or an iPad comes with powerful software that allows students to become powerful filmmakers. One of the most important, I think, recent developments have been Google and Microsoft's recognition that the digital classroom needs an alternative to an exercise book, and I think they've made progress in this area. We use Microsoft's OneNote, or Class OneNote, which behaves and looks like a digital ring binder. Students make their notes, can incorporate and copy anything digital that they find useful. They can even record the audio from a lesson. So if I suggest that something's really important to remember, advice for a test, for example, they hit record as they make their notes and record what I'm saying.
Ask that again, it's really important. We've got 5 minutes left.
How did he get an army?
How did William get an army to go to England?
Students can, of course, store their work, and I can mark their work using OneNote when I want. And I can leave feedback when I want. I can write my comments, so I can even occasionally leave a little spoken message, which I think is quite personal. And this is particularly useful if I go around the classroom giving individual attention to individual students. If I'm going to take them through an essay they've written, for example, I want them to record what I'm going to say. Our dialogue then be something they review later to remember what I said. Although imperialism caused a lot of conflict in rough times, it also brought a good few things. What's that got to do with the question?
Okay.
Do you see?
Yeah, I see.
What do you see?
I see the how does it link
Link to what?
to the question.
Right. If I only see a class once a week, I can mark their work on OneNote before the next lesson. I can see what they could do and what they couldn't do, what they understood, what they didn't understand, before the next lesson. I can therefore plan my next lesson based upon the feedback I've already given. I can also do this in class during a lesson in real time, which is a bit spooky at first, to be typing away on your computer and to have your teacher suddenly writing alongside you. But, you know, they get used to that sort of thing.
What about exams? Like, how do you think we can use technology for examinations?
In most parts of the world, and until recently, even here, all examinations take place with pen and paper. And this has had significant implications for digital classrooms, because it means the closer you get to examinations, the more you have to sort of switch the digital off and move to the analog, so that students get in practice at handwriting, for example, or doing exams in sort of paper and pencil environments. Things are changing. The MYP has already become ESS. The diploma program of the IB will be soon. And so we've moved towards that by having all our assessment in individuals and societies and in history. All of that is now done, all that assessment is done digitally using Microsoft Forms. And I think this is really important. Exam papers can now include much more than just text and pictures. They can include video and interactivities. I think this is great. One example is, you know, rather than analyse, which I think is a very unnatural thing to do, the text of a speech by Hitler, they can watch the text actually being enacted by Hitler and then comment not so much on what it said, but how he said it, which, as anyone knows, is rather more important when analysing the power of Hitler as an orator.
So, you're talking a lot about technology. What else makes history different here at LCIS?
Okay, so apart from the technology, what makes us a little different is our very old-fashioned emphasis on the importance of historical knowledge. Nothing annoys me more than the claim that because we have Google, kids don't need to learn and remember anything anymore. I find that really annoying.
We're used to teaching in a traditional style classroom where I stand here in front of you and I talk.
Becoming more of a guide on the side rather than a sage on the stage.
And instead of having the boring deck of slides, I said, you're going to find all this information.
They don't need a textbook anymore. They can Google something in 2 seconds and figure out the answer.
The idea that you can look something up is nonsense. I'm going to test Bianca now, for example, and I hope she's paying attention. But Bianca, if you look up the Peace of Westphalia, Wikipedia will tell you the following, and I quote, the Peace of Westphalia was a series of peace treaties signed in 1648, enhancing powers of the sovereign nation-state and resolving much of Europe's Protestant-Catholic conflict. These treaties ended the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, in the Holy Roman Empire. Mean much to you, Bianca? No, I didn't think so. Okay, so I understand this extract because I understand Holy Roman Empire. I understand 30 Years' War. I understand what the Protestant-Catholic conflict was. I even know what was going on in 1648 and where Westphalia is. If you don't know those things, that extract is going to mean absolutely nothing. Now, you can look up Holy Roman Empire, but again, you're going to be faced with exactly the same problems. Without contextual knowledge, it won't mean anything. That's the point. So learning that is focused on skills, on 21st century skills, in isolation is sterile and largely pointless. If you want to make students learn the content of history, you have to valorize the content. You have to test them on it. But schools have tended to avoid this because it's rather old-fashioned and quite boring. And I think one of the things we can do with the technology also is make it less boring. We use games online, fling the teacher as a favourite. But also traditional board games like Guess Who. You know Guess Who? You know when you put the thing on you have to guess who that is. Like, do that in the classroom. It's quite good for learning a little bit about who that person is.
Am I English?
Yes. Am I French? No.
Am I a philosopher?
No.
No, you're not. Galileo?
Oh my days!
And that card game, Top Trumps,
Hat quality.
That would have been one of my favourite games when I was 10 years old.
70. Yes!
What about TV game shows? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Yeah? What about, my favourite one at the moment is The Weakest Link. You know The Weakest Link? No? Oh. Time to vote off who you think is the weakest link.
Louis the 14th.
Louis the 14th. It didn't go very well, did it? One of the greatest absolute monarchs ever. The longest reigning ever. The man who made Versailles what it is. I'm afraid you are the weakest link. Goodbye. The weakest link is a great way to teach both simple content but also historical significance, and that brings me on to the rather more important observation that knowledge is more than facts, names and dates. And this is where I think empathy comes into the history classroom. For me, this is the most important activity that we can do in history, trying to put ourselves into the shoes of those who lived in the past. Of course, as we all know, the past is a foreign country full of strange people with strange ideas. And what we try and do in history is to understand those ideas, not to judge the people who held them, but to understand them. We try to avoid what the great English historian E.P. Thompson called the enormous condescension of posterity.
Good morning, gentlemen. Morning, Prime Minister.
Take the Abyssinian crisis role play that I do, for example, about appeasement in 1935. Now, of course, we know that the policies of that government in 1935 were going to lead to the Second World War, and students have great difficulty understanding why politicians could make those decisions, how they could be so stupid, basically.
Declarations that he has made. We need to decide as a cabinet what the British government will do.
But when you take the students through those events, when you make them retrace the steps of those who lived through those and made those decisions, as the cabinet did in 1935, it corrects the 2020 vision that is the power of hindsight.
Confusing to consider why they decided to do that and why they decided to get towards appeasement rather than conflict.
Yeah, it's exactly right. When you just look at a book, you just think, what an idiot. But when you have to try to think like they did and put yourself in that mindset, not only does it make you more understandable of their understanding of their decisions, but you also remember more why.
Yeah, it's like taking out the hindsight and everything and just understanding better.
Yeah, definitely.
We use empathy widely in the classroom. Obviously, we use technology to make the experience a little bit more Hollywood. So, you know, we've had students travel through classical Rome, yeah, debating the merits of aqueducts in the Colosseum. You remember that? Yeah.
Wasn't the aqueduct just so the path? They're so fun to go in. But people were being killed, and the poor animals were being tortured into doing that. But also it was crowded and packed with people. There were probably pickpockets, and there was poo all over the streets.
They've become members of the House of Commons, debating legislation on the abolition of child labour, for example, and we can put them in the House of Commons.
My name is John Wood. I was born in 1793 in Bradford. I'm the eldest child in my family. When I was younger, aged 15 to be precise, I was apprenticed to Richard Smith, the largest spinner of worsted yarn in Bradford.
They become medieval peasants, explaining rather bizarrely why they've gone on medieval pilgrimage.
I began my pilgrimage today at dawn. I brought a satchel with some bread, dates, and a cup for water. I also brought a staff to help me on my journey. I began walking towards the direction of the sun as I was told by my priest.
And this year we did a 99-year-to-the-day reconstruction of the Treaty of Versailles, which allowed us to, I suppose, get to grips with what ultimately caused the Second World War and understand again that they weren't stupid. So empathy is not just a skill or a form of knowledge, it helps to bring the past alive.
Welcome to all the delegations. I hope that today we are able to achieve something that is in the interests of all.
Alsace-Lorraine was taken from France by Germany in the last war that we amicably fought together.
Most of you know we are an island, so all our trading comes by the sea.
No longer a case, and this is why there should be no private meetings between governments.
I have two more! Two more! All those in favour of the motion, please.
It helps make history real. And I think that's ultimately what we're trying to do here, make history real. Now before you cut, I just want to say thank you for inviting me, Bianca. Do you think you might be able to get Will's autograph for me?
Will? Do I know Will? I don't think I know Will. Anyway, cut!